Hi there. Good evening. I apologize that I'm keeping you here on a late Tuesday, but let me begin. Before I want to acknowledge that I am joining you from the traditional territory of many nations, including the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Chippewa, and the Wendat peoples. And for those of you who are settlers or even immigrants to Canada, it's important to recognize that Indigenous peoples have always been here and that we all have a role to play in reconciliation moving forward. Hello again, and thank you for joining me at the conclusion of our first meeting of the Free Trade Commission under the new NAFTA. It was great to meet virtually over the past 2 days with U.S. Trade Representative Ambassador Katherine Tai and Mexican Secretary of the Economy Tatiana Clouthier Carrillo. It was an incredible and historic to have 3 women representing North America's trade relationship for the first time. Over the last 2 days, we assessed the progress that we've made in the first year of our new agreement and the ways to work together moving forward. As you can tell from our trilateral statement, we had positive and productive discussions on the implementation of the new NAFTA by our 3 countries and on shared priorities such as labor, the environment, and inclusive trade. And as we finish the fight against COVID-19, all 3 of us are committed to ensuring the modernized new NAFTA keeps North America competitive and prosperous. This will ensure a strong recovery and long-term growth that creates jobs in all of our countries. In our next steps, we will work to strengthen the competitiveness of the North America economic region while protecting the environment and supporting workers and vulnerable communities in each of our countries. We agreed that trade policy should foster broad-based and equitable growth that works for everyone, while spurring innovation and protecting our shared environment. I'm looking forward to continuing to work on our shared priorities and to ensure that our integrated North America supply chains continue to provide economic growth, prosperity, and good jobs for a stronger shared recovery from COVID-19 and beyond. Thank you so much, and now I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you very much, Minister Ng. We will now take questions from reporters. We have about 25 minutes with the Minister. 1 question, 1 follow-up. We will start with 5 questions from the phone. Over to you, Moderator. Merci.
Thank you. Merci. If you have a question, please press star 1 on your device keypad. Si vous avez une question, veuillez s'il vous plaît appuyer sur les touches étoile 1 de votre appareil. And the first question, the première question, David Juncker, Reuters, Ottawa. Please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Minister. We gather that the word robust was used several times to describe the negotiations. Could you give us some idea of the flavor of the disagreements?
Well, today, or over the last 2 days, it was a meeting with Canada and Mexico and the United States. And what we were doing was, through the Free Trade Commission, was taking stock of the really good work that has been done by the many committees that have been set up under NAFTA. Despite there being a pandemic, the committees have been meeting and have been reporting back to the 3 trade ministers on their progress. And really what this is about is making sure that the modernized NAFTA is working for our countries, for our small and medium-sized businesses, ensuring that the provisions that are in the new NAFTA are being moved forward. Ultimately, the goal here is to make the NAFTA work for our 3 countries, particularly now as we are in economic recovery and ensuring that this growth is both inclusive and that we are tackling issues like climate change together.
Follow up?
Yeah, and secondly, Minister, what kind of discussions did you have with your U.S. counterpart on softwood lumber? Were there any results?
I did have an opportunity to raise softwood lumber with my colleague, Ambassador Tai, and I raise this issue at every opportunity because it is important to Canadians. Not only did I raise it with Ambassador Tai in our bilateral meeting yesterday, but of course with the President earlier this year, but also with Commerce Secretary Raimondo. We, of course, Canada reiterated that a negotiated agreement is in the best interest of both countries. The forestry sector here in Canada, of course, employs hundreds of thousands of good jobs across the country, and we will vigorously defend their interest. We have been clear that the duties imposed by the U.S. on softwood are both unwarranted and unfair, and they do hurt workers, both here in Canada as well as in the U.S. But we continue to remain steadfast to wanting to continue to work with the U.S. on this very important issue.
Thank you. Next questions, please.
Thank you. Merci. The next question is from Janice McGregor, CBC News. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Good evening, Minister. I have a question about something actually that I read on the USTR's readout yesterday, expressing concern about the Canadian government's intention to bring in a digital services tax, something that was announced in the budget over the last few months, much discussed. How committed is the Trudeau government to proceeding with this digital services tax if it is going to antagonize our NAFTA partner in this way and potentially invite sanctions against Canada?
Well, thank you, Janice, for that important question. The ambassador and I did have an opportunity to talk about this issue, and I shared with her our government's commitment to ensure that businesses in all sectors, including digital corporations, pay their fair share of taxes. But this is also why Canada has been working with its international partners at the OECD at a multilateral approach, which is what we would prefer. We have, as you know, through our budget, committed to implementing a tax on large multinational digital corporations. But until such time that an acceptable common approach is agreed to at the multilateral level, and this is what I was able to communicate to Ambassador Tai in our conversation, and that we certainly are committed to ensuring that everyone pays their fair share.
Follow up?
Can I also ask you for an update on where things stand in terms of the consultations under the dispute resolution chapter on Canada's methods for giving out dairy quota? I understand those consultations were underway earlier this year, but I don't believe we've heard anything at all since. Was that part of the conversation over the last 2 days? And where do things stand with that? Is that proceeding to arbitration, or is that going to be able to be resolved?
Well, those consultations have been going on, and of course, took a little bit more time than we would have liked because of COVID. What I've shared with Ambassador Tai is that Canada takes our international obligations very seriously, and like all aspects of the Canada-U.S. trade relationship, this here and this in dairy, we believe that we are meeting our obligations under CUSMA, and to the dairy farmers and to our strong supply managed sector, we have committed to always standing up for their interests and that of our Canadian sector.
Thank you, Janice. Next question, please.
Thank you. The next question, la prochaine question, Stephen Chase, Globe and Mail. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Yes, good evening. I wanted to ask you about Line 5. It's Enbridge's contention and the Canadian government's contention that any decisions about the safety of a pipeline are really for the U.S. government to decide. So did you obtain any commitment from your U.S. counterpart to intervene, or that the Biden administration will intervene in the Line 5 dispute, or did they give you the impression that they're going to leave it to the court?
Well, this is an issue that is important to our workers and to our energy security. I, of course, had the opportunity to raise this with Ambassador Tai. I've also raised it with Secretary Raimondo when I spoke with her very recently. The Canadian energy infrastructure and the shutdown of Line 5 is going to have profound consequences on here in Canada, but also in the U.S. So I have certainly raised it with my U.S. counterparts and the importance of keeping Line 5 open.
Follow up?
Yeah, my second question is about the Mexican electricity legislation, the legislation that the Mexican government has introduced that would give preference to state companies. I gather there's a $4 billion of Canadian investment that's at stake there. Do you expect this will end up as a complaint, either as an investor complaint under the old NAFTA, the sort of legacy NAFTA system, or a government-to-government a complaint? Do you expect this will lead to some kind of dispute settlement?
Well, I've certainly had an opportunity to speak to Secretary Clouthier most recently here in our bilateral meeting, so that and raised the concerns for Canadian investors and Canadian companies, particularly those in the renewable energy space and our investors. She and I have committed that we will need to continue to work on this issue. Our companies and our investors are certainly looking for the predictability that in this market, and this is an area that I've committed to continue to work on behalf of Canadian companies to advocate to Mexico.
Thank you, Stephen. Next question, please.
Thank you. Merci. The next question, la prochaine question, Murad Mehdi, Dologic. Please go ahead. La parole est à vous.
Hi, Minister. Thank you for taking our questions. To follow up on Janice's question, when other countries have implemented digital services tax, the USTR has launched investigations under Section 301, and in many cases, it has recommended retaliatory tariffs. In your meeting with Ambassador Tai, did Ambassador Tai say anything about the possibility of U.S. tariffs in response to your government's digital services tax plan?
Well, the meeting that we just had over the last 2 days with Canada and Mexico is all about taking stock of the modernized NAFTA and how this agreement, this very good agreement, is going to help create competitiveness for the North American region between Canada, U.S., and Mexico. So very much of our conversations were focused on how we build back better, how we can collaborate to fight climate change, how we can create those jobs and opportunities in a way that that is inclusive and therefore includes women, Indigenous entrepreneurs, racialized entrepreneurs, making sure that the climate for investment and for growth is there, particularly for our small and medium-sized companies that are innovative to trade and to be able to expand into the North American market. So yes, the Ambassador Tai and I did have an opportunity to talk about digital taxation, and I did share with her our government's commitment to ensuring that businesses of all sectors, including digital companies, pay their fair share of taxes, but that we also in Canada have been working with international partners at the OECD to reach a multilateral approach. So we did have an opportunity to speak about that, but most of the conversation, in fact, the lion's share of the conversation was really about taking stock of where we are in the modernized NAFTA and ensuring that this very good agreement works in the interest of our businesses and our workers so that we are creating that North American competitiveness as we are building that road to recovery.
Follow up?
Respectfully, Minister, I asked about a very specific thing, which is, did the ambassador raise the possibility of U.S. tariffs? I understand the government's position on the DST, why it says it's implementing it. I understand the discussions you had about USMCA. Asking specifically, did you discuss the possibility of U.S. tariffs in response to the DST, as there have been for other countries that have implemented DSTs?
Well, what I did have the opportunity to do was share with the ambassador our government's commitment on this front, and that was the conversation we had.